What if the marriages that defined Hollywood's golden age were never about love at all? What if those glossy wedding photos, the red carpet smiles, and the so-called fairy tale romances were nothing more than illusions, carefully crafted shields to protect the industry's biggest stars? These arrangements had a name: Lavender marriages. They weren't born of passion or devotion. They were designed as business contracts, signed to preserve reputations and protect investments. In an era where being different could destroy careers, some of Hollywood's brightest lights were forced to live double lives. Some marriages lasted only days, others endured decades, built not on intimacy, but on mutual survival. Behind every headline of Hollywood's golden couple lurked a hidden truth, one that threatened to unravel everything if exposed. Today, we pull back the velvet curtain to reveal 15 of the most significant lavender marriages of Hollywood's golden age. Stories of sacrifice, deception, and endurance that forever changed the way we see the stars who seemed untouchable. Rock Hudson was Universal Studios' golden boy. Tall, handsome, with shoulders that seemed sculpted for the screen and a voice as smooth as silk, he embodied American masculinity. Audiences adored him. Women dreamed of him. Studios banked millions on his allure. But in 1954, everything nearly collapsed. Confidential magazine, the ruthless tabloid, famous for destroying careers, had in its possession a packet of incriminating evidence: letters, phone logs, and even a photograph of Hudson with another man. "If this is real," the editor whispered, "we can bring down all of Hollywood." Universal panicked. Hudson's image wasn't just valuable, it was the cornerstone of their box office future. Within 24 hours, a plan was hatched. There would be no denials, no courtroom battles. The scandal would be crushed the old-fashioned way with a marriage. Enter Phyllis Gates. She wasn't a movie star or a socialite. She was Hudson's agent's secretary, discreet, loyal, and, most importantly, untainted by scandal. Just 48 hours later, in a rushed ceremony attended by almost no one, Rock Hudson and Phyllis Gates became husband and wife. The press was fed a neat love story. 5 carefully staged photos were released to the public. The illusion was complete, but the marriage itself was hollow. Hudson continued living apart, appearing on film sets with glamorous co-stars, while Phyllis faded into obscurity. By 1958, she filed for divorce, citing mental cruelty. Hudson remained a prisoner of his public image until the very end. When asked years later if she regretted it all, Phyllis quietly replied, "I don't regret it, but I feel sorrow. Sorrow for a man who was never allowed to love truthfully." But if Hudson's marriage was a hasty cover-up, Cary Grant's story showed just how elaborate these illusions could become. Cary Grant, the man who defined sophistication on screen, spent much of his early career sharing a Santa Monica beach house with fellow actor Randolph Scott. They weren't shy about it. Magazines of the time called them Hollywood's most unusual roommates, publishing photographs of them cooking together, reading side by side, even doing chores in matching outfits. At first, the studio system treated it as harmless. Bachelor charm, they called it, a lifestyle of freedom before settling down with the right woman. But as Grant's fame skyrocketed, scrutiny deepened. Suddenly, roommates wasn't an acceptable answer. Grant's solution was a series of marriages, 5 in total. None lasted long. One of them, to heiress Barbara Hutton, was perfectly timed to silence rumors at the height of his fame. Behind closed doors, though, he reportedly remained financially and emotionally tied to Scott for years. Decades later, Grant's third wife, Betsy Drake, wrote bitterly in her journal, "I didn't marry a man. I married a shadow, and that shadow belonged to someone else." Grant never admitted anything publicly. In his final interview, when asked if there was a time he wasn't truly himself, he smiled at the camera and said nothing. His silence spoke louder than any confession. For Grant and Scott, silence was survival. But for Anthony Perkins, silence became a shadow that haunted his entire life. Anthony Perkins will forever be remembered as Norman Bates, the disturbed motel owner in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. The role made him famous but also typecast him as fragile, secretive, and haunted an eerie mirror of his real life. Behind the scenes, Perkins reportedly shared a quiet romance with Rock Hudson. They were seen together at parties, driving away from events in the same car, even renting a cabin together in Big Bear Lake. But as Confidential magazine ramped up its attacks on closeted stars, Perkins became a prime target. The solution was marriage. In 1973, Perkins wed Barry Berenson, an elegant photographer from a famous family. The marriage was private, the timing suspiciously convenient. Yet unlike many Lavender marriages, theirs grew into something more. Berenson knew the truth, but she chose loyalty. "I love him," she once told a friend. "No matter who he loves, I still want to be there." They had 2 sons together, and Barry remained by Perkins' side until his death from AIDS in 1992. In a cruel twist, she herself died 9 years later aboard American Airlines Flight 11 on 9/11. At Perkins's funeral, Barry reportedly whispered, "I was the wife of a man who never really belonged to me, but I never regretted it. I was his safe place." If Perkins' marriage was built on quiet devotion, Judy Garland's was pure Hollywood manipulation. By 1944, Judy Garland was MGM's brightest star, adored worldwide for The Wizard of Oz. But she was spiraling under the studio's suffocating control. Meanwhile, Vincente Minnelli, the studio's rising director, carried whispers of his private life that threatened his career. When a scandalous file on Minnelli surfaced, MGM boss Louis B. Mayer summoned the pair. His ultimatum was cold and direct: marry or you're finished. On the 15th of June, 1945, Garland and Minnelli were wed in Mayer's home. No grand ceremony, no honeymoon romance. According to hotel staff, Garland slept alone that night. Their marriage lasted 6 years, producing 1 child, Liza Minnelli. But Garland knew it was a sham. She often referred to it bitterly as the Lavender trap. The divorce left her broken, fueling her struggles with pills and alcohol. Hollywood saved 2 careers, but destroyed a woman in the process. If Garland's marriage was forced, Barbara Stanwyck's was orchestrated with precision. Barbara Stanwyck and Robert Taylor were golden idols of MGM. On May 14, 1939, they wed in what should have been Hollywood's most glamorous ceremony. But something was strange. There was no kiss, no cake, no dancing. On their honeymoon, Stanwyck read a book while Taylor locked himself in the bathroom. Industry insiders whispered that Stanwyck was closer to women than men, while Taylor was MGM's carefully polished heartthrob. Together, they were a brand, not a couple. Their marriage lasted 12 years, built on respect and mutual understanding, but never intimacy. They divorced in 1951 with the blunt explanation: incompatibility. Perhaps the only truly honest thing about their union. If Stanwyck and Taylor treated marriage as business, Cole Porter and Linda Lee Thomas elevated it into something deeper, a pact of freedom. Cole Porter, one of the greatest composers in American history, lived in an era when his truth could never be spoken aloud. Linda Lee Thomas, a wealthy divorcee, knew that truth the moment she met him. In 1919, they married in Paris not for romance, but for companionship. Linda was elegant, worldly, and fiercely protective. Cole was brilliant, restless, and gay. Together, they created a life of mutual loyalty. For 34 years, she stood by him through triumphs and tragedies, from Broadway glory to the writing accident that left him crippled. In return, Cole gave her devotion in the form he could: companionship and respect. When Linda died in 1954, Porter shut himself away. He never wrote another song again. But while Porter's marriage was honest in its own way, Raymond Burr's was built almost entirely on lies. To millions, Raymond Burr was Perry Mason, the brilliant attorney who always won his case. But Burr's real case was against truth itself. His official biography read like a tragedy. A wife killed in a plane crash, another lost to cancer, a son dead of leukemia. None of it was real. They were lies invented to explain his solitary life. The truth? Burr's only real marriage was a brief one to Isabella Ward in 1948. His true partnership was with actor Robert Benavides, with whom he shared his life for 35 years. They built a vineyard, raised orchids, and lived quietly, though never openly. When Burr died in 1993, he left everything to Benavides. His family got nothing. The man remembered as Perry Mason had lived a script more fictional than anything on television. But not all Lavender marriages were hollow. Some were rooted in understanding, like Charles Laughton and Elsa Lanchester. Charles Laughton, the Academy Award-winning actor, was open about his truth before marrying Elsa Lanchester in 1929. She accepted it. Together, they forged a partnership that lasted over 3 decades. They weren't lovers in the traditional sense, but collaborators and companions. They acted side by side, built careers together, and protected each other from Hollywood's cruelty. When Laughton died in 1962, Elsa never remarried. She later hinted at their unique arrangement in her autobiography. "Ours was not a marriage of passion," she wrote. "It was a marriage of understanding." Others, like Danny Kaye and Sylvia Fine, turned marriage into a professional partnership that built an empire of laughter. Danny Kaye's comedic genius was fueled by Sylvia Fine, his wife and creative partner. She wrote his sharpest material, managed his career, and gave him the image of a devoted family man. Rumors swirled about Kaye's affairs, including whispers of Laurence Olivier, but his marriage to Fine gave both of them stability and power. Their daughter was born in 1946, and though they often lived separately, they remained linked until Kaye's death in 1987. Their partnership produced films like The Secret Life of Walter Mitty and White Christmas. It wasn't conventional love, but it created art that endured. And then there was Marlene Dietrich, who shattered conventions entirely. Marlene Dietrich never cared for rules. With her androgynous beauty and magnetic charisma, she defied Hollywood expectations from the start. Her marriage to Rudolph Sieber was no different. They wed young, had a daughter, and then lived completely separate lives. Sieber openly lived with another woman on a poultry farm, while Dietrich carried on relationships with both men and women. Yet they never divorced. Their legal union offered cover, while privately, they lived exactly how they wanted. Dietrich turned her defiance into part of her mystique, wearing men's suits, kissing women on screen, and daring Hollywood to stop her. Their marriage lasted more than 50 years, not as husband and wife, but as co-conspirators against convention. These 15 Lavender marriages weren't accidents. They were survival strategies, carefully planned performances meant to protect careers and reputations. Some were heartbreaking cages, like Rock Hudson's Importner. Others were lifelong partnerships, built on respect, like Cole Porter's Importnurses. Some were pure fiction, like Raymond Burr's, and others were daringly modern, like Marlene Dietrich's DNOA. But all carried the same price: the denial of authenticity. Stars lived in shadows, forced to sacrifice their truest selves for the sake of Hollywood's illusion. And while society has changed, the question lingers: has Hollywood truly evolved, or simply found new masks to sell its stars? What struck you most about these marriages? Which story surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more hidden histories of Hollywood.